So Lynn, we'd like to thank you for being here with us, and we'll let you lead off with some of your comments, your thoughts about election integrity. And we'll see, we've got several questions we'll be asking you, and we'll just see where this call takes us, Lynn.
Well, thank you, Presley. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. You're loud and clear.
Well, hello to everybody on the call. I'm sorry I was a little bit late. I had to get the number and dial it in. I noticed when I was at the Beaufort County Convention that it seemed odd to me that the ballots were put into unsealed envelopes where they had cut the top off. And then there was an hour and a half or so of speeches, and then they take the ballots over to count them. I'm not sure anybody watched what was being done with those ballots, but why were they open? They told me that they had to cut off the ceiling top because they reused them from last year and they were trying to save money. I thought it was suspicious. I heard some information, I think it was from the Spartanburg meeting, where they used the electronic computer type voting, and there were some irregularities there where people voted but their vote didn't count. They do the same kind of fractional type vote calculations where they can skew it. Any computer voting machine is wide open for manipulation. They just shouldn't be used. Then I noticed that there's been a push for the last at least 2+ weeks where Drew McKissick is saying we may have to have a virtual convention. They're planning on a virtual convention. I noticed there was an article where Drew McKissick said, in an article written by Will Folks, that Wood has no path to victory. And while Folks did comment in the body of the article that McKissick's comment seemed inconsistent with anecdotal evidence in terms of the number of delegates that I was winning, that's buried in the story, and the headline is the propaganda. If you think back, you'll remember how we had poll after poll before Trump-Biden that had Biden in the lead. I don't think anybody believed those polls that supported Trump. But they create a mindset that somehow McKissick's, in this instance, McKissick's winning, Wood can't win, so that when they cheat in the virtual election with the computer voting, nobody says what happened. It's like consistent reports beforehand that he can't win, and then he doesn't win. Drew McKissick, like Biden, may he rest in peace, we hope, like Biden, he's not campaigning. He's given the same exact speech 4 times that I'm aware of, and another time I've been told about the bikers for Trump. It's a speech that I don't know how he thinks it helps him, because he demeans the bikers for Trump, who are the solid middle class of our party. So I don't think McKissick is worried, because he thinks the fix is in. The advantage that we have that we did not have on November the 3rd is that we know what he's doing before he does it. So I believe that there's got to be a strong push for an in-person convention. Governor McMaster has opened up the state of South Carolina. So what's the excuse? I've been to at least 3 conventions where there were 3, maybe 400 people, no mask, no social distancing, which I think is fine. I don't think there's a need for it. But even if you had that and you wanted to separate people 6 feet, there is no excuse for a virtual convention except to use it as a mechanism to cheat. Now, I'm not saying that I'm way ahead, but I know that when we try to get the delegates, they will not give us the information. Drew McKissick is writing them under the guise of the SCGOP, but he doesn't allow me to have the email addresses to write them or to communicate with them, because he's afraid that we'll locate the delegates, we'll get a pre-convention poll of the delegates to show that we're winning, so he's trying to deny us that opportunity. This guy is rigging the election a la November 2020, the same playbook, and I'm very happy to see see how hard everyone is working and how they are objecting and being vocal about what they're trying to do. That's the only way to stop it, is to shine the light on it and get McKissick on the run where he's forced into doing it right, and then have, heck, if you had to, have the bikers. Somebody needs to sit there and watch these votes being counted. Last night, I went over to the convention, and it was in Hampton, and a good man that goes to my church, Brian, gave a great speech. He got the longest applause. And then they came back 10 minutes or less later and said the other person who was not there, a person of standing who's been in the party for a while, she won. I don't think they had time to count those votes. Now, I may be jumping the gun, but something's not right about what's being done there, particularly some of these conventions where the establishment has the party in that county under lock and key. They own them. When you get into the other counties where the establishment does not have them under their thumb, you're getting a much different result. So my position is simple. I think we've got to continue to go after McKissick and the powers that be to demand an open, honest election. If I win, I win. If I lose, I lose. But if it's not an honest, open, verifiable election, the South Carolina Republican Party loses, period.
And Len Presley here. You know, we have been trying to get the list of all the delegates, folks, from the various counties. One of the ways that McKissick is cheating, he is getting all, because he is the chairman of the SCGOP, all of the counties are required by rule to report to him within 3 days of their county convention their list of delegates to the state. And as soon as those lists go to Drew, all of a sudden, a computer-generated handwritten letter goes to each of those delegates, asking them to vote for Drew. Unfortunately, we have tried, and we've been told by Drew's office that there's no way that they are going to give us this list of delegates. Now, there's nothing specific in the rules that say they have to, and that's one of the problems with our state, Lynn. These rules are so arcane, so nebulous, that they can be interpreted one way for one day and another way for the next day. But this is another way they're cheating. So we are playing, folks, with our hands tied behind our backs. We're flying blind. We've got a good team of people on the ground that are working in these various counties. So I know we've got close to 100 people on here. So if any of you have any access to any of these lists of delegates from your county, please get them to us. We would like to be able to reach out to them. Lynn would like to talk to them and let them know about his candidacy. But right now, this is just another way that they're cheating. They're not allowing us to play on a level playing field.
Well, let me add a couple other things that show you the prejudice of the establishment. I went over last night to Hampton, and they told me I could have 5 minutes at the very beginning and that Drew was going to speak at the end. And if you've seen the video clip that I put up on Telegram, you'll see that when I was trying to finish up, the lady literally came up there and almost told me, "Get off, you're done." And then the introduction for Drew was longer than they gave me to speak. And he spoke twice as long. When I went over and drove all the way over to, I've lost the name of the county, excuse me, it's been a long day, where Vernon Jones showed up to speak at the convention. I drove 4 hours or 3.5 hours there, and then I sat there for 5+ hours, told that I would speak at the end for 5 minutes. And yet they brought Vernon Jones over there, a candidate for the governor of Georgia, somebody I would urge you to never support with any money from South Carolina. He speaks, they go through the rigmarole, and I don't get a chance to speak until 10 o'clock at night. I still think we did well in that county.
That was Anderson County.
I'm sorry, yes, Anderson County, I'm sorry. I've also been told anecdotally by at least 2 or 3 other people that there have been battles where they do not want me to speak at all, or they'll give me 2 minutes or 5 minutes. So they're not leveling the playing field at the meetings, and then they're clearly not leveling the playing field when they have no communication by email from me, and they've got Drew McKissick out emailing like crazy. I heard today, and I hope this is not true, but I'm afraid it may be, that Maurice Washington, who I think was under a lot of pressure over in Charleston, but allowed me to speak out of fairness. And then at the last minute, McKissick sent a surrogate over. That was the lady that told me at the end, go back to Georgia. I heard today that Maurice was so upset over the unfairness with respect to the delegate list that he may have resigned as executive director in Charleston. I hope that's not true. If he did, I hope some people will urge him to go back and keep fighting. So what's happening here is that I don't want to divide the party. There's already a division in the party that exists between the people that make it up, the members, and the elite that rule it and have ruled it for too long. I want to fix that, and then I want to make the party better. What Drew McKissick is doing is he is going to shatter this party if he continues these kinds of unfair tactics and does not give the members of the party a fair opportunity to voice their positions with respect to the chairmanship. So I don't think I'm dividing. I think Drew McKissick is dividing. And when you start losing people like Maurice Washington, that you start down a slippery slope. He's going to end up being chairman of a party that doesn't have any members. So I don't think that's going to happen. I will say that I was not a football player. I played baseball, but I was just talking to Randy Cross, who played for the Falcons. And he told me, he said, never forget in football, no matter what they tell you, you can't beat a good ground game. And I think we've got the ground game. I think y'all caught them by surprise. I would continue to urge that the ground game go forward. The grassroots people keep working, stay determined, don't take no for an answer, shake it up, and force them ultimately to have no choice but to do the right thing.
Yes, Lynn, that's true. And to your point, with Maurice there in Charleston County, I've received word today that in 2 other counties, they're going to remain nameless right now, but surrogates have come to the chairman of these other counties that were leaning towards you, and they have put a tremendous amount of pressure on these people for them to back away from with their pressure, with their support for you. And they beat these people up with intimidation and bullying tactics that are just unconscionable. And all because these people want to keep control of their power. And Lynn, you've taught me this. That makes me ask the question, why? What are they hiding? What is it that makes them fight so dirty to want to keep their power and control? And maybe you could talk about that a little bit.
Well, you know, we may have some McKissick people on the call. They can hear this too. I don't have anything to hide. This is not just about staying in power for power's sake and money. That's a large part of it. I think this is about staying in power so that a new administration will not uncover the crimes that are being committed. Now, I started off looking at Rampart PAC, and we saw where it linked to Chinese pornography. Now they say, and I'm not going to be able to refute this, that somehow when that PAC went out of business in April of this year, that somebody else got the name of the PAC or the domain and put the Chinese pornography on there. But let's keep going. The guy that signed off on Rampart dissolution, the managing agent, was a guy named Timothy Koch, K-O-C-H. Another man's name who escapes me. Koch was one of the managing agents that created Rampart PAC.
Brian Dumas.
Yes, Brian Dumas. Koch is linked to Asia GOP. Asia GOP endorsed Joe Biden. I'm also told that Rampart, and this is being verified, but I have it from good authority, at least initially, that Rampart was created to help, I believe, a congressman in Indiana. Who's from Indiana? Mike Pence. I've heard some very serious things about Pence in terms of involvement in nefarious activities in Indiana. And you start connecting the dots, and I mean, we're just talking about Rampart. There's all kinds of money floating around out there being sent to or sent out of the South Carolina GOP. Lindsey Graham has $102 million in his own PAC. Another PAC that states very clearly it's for the benefit of Graham got $15 million in and spent $15 million. It looks like he's got a lot of gambling money coming in. $102 million. Now, Presley and the good folks in the party have been running me all around the state. I'm not complaining. It does not. One of the great lies in politics is that it takes millions of dollars to run a statewide campaign. That's just money changers. It does not cost that much money to go out and meet the people and get your voice out on social media and other ways of getting your message across. This is just a created boondoggle where millions of dollars are being passed around between business consultants and pollsters. I think it probably involves some level of money being hidden. I think it involves money being sent to money laundering and money being spent on nefarious activities. South Carolina, just like Georgia, I'm not fussing at my new home state. Atlanta was known as the center for child sex trafficking. I know that former client of mine years ago, Sheldon Adelson, the gambling tried to get into Atlanta and underground. They're still trying. All of that crime goes in the same direction. You'll have child sex trafficking, gambling, prostitution, drugs. I know that Charleston, Myrtle Beach, Aiken, other places, it is believed have problems with child sex trafficking. I know they want to bring I-73. And I-73, they tell me, well, we need it for evacuation. I asked somebody, when was the last time in the last 20 years, how many times was Myrtle Beach evacuated? They said one time. I said, how did it go? They said it went fine. I said, well, if it ain't broke, why do you want to fix it? Then they say, well, they're telling us it'll help us with traffic. I lived in Atlanta for a long time. I watched them build one interstate system and then another, widening them. All that happened was the traffic in Atlanta got unbearably congested. Everybody in Atlanta hates the traffic there. The interstates don't help your traffic. They make your traffic worse. But if you got an interstate highway, you got an easy access for people to come and gamble and do other things. And you've also got to remember, interstates are for traffic. It links to child sex trafficking. You've got to have a transportation hub. Atlanta's got the airport. I'm not trying to make this into something bigger than what it is, but I don't think that the McMaster, McKissick, and Graham cabal, and maybe a couple of others I could name, I don't think that cabal, while it's controlling South Carolina, I think those groups of politicians are controlled by a larger group. So I think you're going to find in South Carolina and Georgia and other states that there's an entrenched group of people in the Republican Party that are involved in nefarious activities with respect to money. Somebody ought to be taking Lindsey Graham out to the woodshed and demanding why he needs $102 million in his PAC, and he hasn't spent hardly a dime of it. Something's not right in South Carolina. Something's not right in Georgia. All the Republican people in Georgia, none of them fought for the investigation and reversal of the November 2020 election. All the Republicans in South Carolina did not fight for an investigation and reversal of the November 2020 election. I think everybody knows that's in power in the Republican rhino establishment that Donald Trump is intense in the idea of exposing child sex trafficking, among other things that I think may be going on in our state. So they're not interested in Trump being in power. They're not interested in Lin Wood being in a position of power because they want to continue to make money and keep their crimes hidden. That's the truth. There's a problem. I've learned information about McKissick and Graham. I don't want to go into it tonight. We're following up on it, but it seems to be solid, and it's not pretty. It's ugly, but it's going to come out eventually. Drew McKissick is not qualified to be dog catcher in one of these counties, based on what I've heard about him. And yet he's calling the shots for somebody else to run and manipulate the Republican Party and allow it to be a banker for nefarious activities. That's my opinion. And it makes total sense to me that I'm on the target over the target.
Well, Lynn, I think so. And another question that I think you just segued into, I'd like to ask. When you are elected chairman of the SCGOP, what is your vision for how the South Carolina GOP should operate? What should the people expect?
They should expect to go to work. I'm not here to be a dictator. One of the first things I would say, and I've noticed it, and I'm not casting stones. I believe there are a lot of conservatives of color. They are not being included and made to feel that they are part of this party. We need to grow that base of conservatives and give them the respect they deserve. I also think that the middle class, I think Hillary Clinton called them the deplorables. I think Drew McKissick thinks they're deplorables too. The middle class in our country, my father, I grew up top of the lower class, maybe the bottom of the middle class. My dad worked for the unions. He was a Democrat. So was most of the blue collar, hardworking people in America. Then the Democrats went so far left, the middle class, the hard workers, the blue collar workers, the heart and soul of our country, moved over to the Republican Party because they're conservative by definition. The Republican Party, historically, I'm old enough to know this, was made up of the people in suits and ties that were the business elite, Chamber of Commerce, and they took in the middle class for their votes and their money. But they do not respect the middle class. Drew McKissick does not respect bikers for Trump. He doesn't respect the blue-collar, hard-working people. He thinks they're deplorables just like Hillary Clinton does. That's got to end. I think when this is over, what our country is going through, you're going to find that the Democrat Party is done. You're going to have a Republican Party that is now changed with the people that supported Donald Trump. That's why Trump said, don't start a third party, stay in the Republican Party. But I'm sure that Donald Trump will tell you, you got to clean this Republican Party up and get rid of these rhino Republicans and let the people, the heart and soul of America, take over this party. So that's kind of an overall vision of where I think the party needs to go. It needs to become the party of the people. It'll be a powerful force. In terms of the day in and day out administration of the party, I don't know what it is that I'm supposed to do, except I believe that I will be an advocate and a mouthpiece for the party. But I would envision having 2 or 3 people that are solid, can go in and kind of direct how these day in and day out administrative things are done. And all of it will be done under my auspices, but everything will be done consistent with what the members of the party want done. I don't think it takes millions of dollars to effectively operate as a political party in South Carolina. I would also say that South Carolina the party ought to be spending money in South Carolina. Why are we sending money outside of South Carolina? Why are we buying signs and materials outside of the state? We ought to make it South Carolina first, just like we make it America first. So there's always room for cooperation, but there's an interlocking web of rhinos in various states in leadership. That web's got to be severed. We've got to have people looking after the interest of South Carolina Republicans to get elected the people that you want to represent you in the state legislature, in the local governments, and in the federal positions. I think the party has got to go hard on getting rid of the ES&S voting machines. We should never be voting on a computer. They can be hacked by a college or high school student. But when you get into the serious hackers, the computer voting machines are nothing more than a vehicle wide open for fraud and manipulation. I would advocate, if the party agreed, I believe you should consider pushing for voter ID, paper ballots, and fingerprint verification. It's simple, and it's cheap, and it gives you the most integrity. We've got to focus your efforts on getting voter integrity, because if you don't have voter integrity, you do not have the rule of law, just like what we're seeing in the country right now. The people that are illegally claiming to be in power, they are running ramshod over all of our rights and over established rules of law. We still, thank God, have rule of law in our country only because the people on this call and others are law-abiding citizens. The other side is not. So they're trying to take away our rights. They're trying to destroy the middle class. That's all part of the COVID trick. So they end up with a ruling elite and a lower class, servant class. America is different than any place in the world because we have a lower class that can aspire to become a middle class member. We have middle class members that can aspire to be in the upper class. America affords the opportunity for upward mobility if you work hard and play by the rules and you have talents that God gave you and you're willing to put them to use. The Bill Gates, the communists, the globalists, they want to wipe out our middle class. The party needs to emphasize living locally. We need to develop strong local chapters of the party, just like we're doing now in the counties. Grassroots organization where we basically politic locally. All politics is local, and we've turned it on its head and made it statewide or national. We got to reverse that. So those are some general ideas that I have. Within the framework of those ideas, if they are things the party aspires to, I'm only going to be a representative. I'll get good help to help me administratively, but I will be an advocate for your membership in terms of what the party wants seen done in South Carolina. Because South Carolina is a red state. South Carolina voted for Trump by much more than 7%. And a lot of your down ballot races were cheats. I've talked to people that it made no sense that they lost. I think you ought to have an audit of the 2020 November vote in South Carolina. And you're going to find that you're going to need another down ballot vote. You got people in office, from Board of Education members to sheriffs. There's a lot of sheriffs involved in this too. You got to face it. You got to go in and clean out the people that got there by cheating. You got to get honest. I think God-fearing people in there, people that will not lie, cheat, and steal, so that you can once again build integrity in your political system. It starts from the ground up.
Well, Lynn, thank you for that. Jeff, you're on. Do you have a set of questions for Lynn?
Well, I mean, I'm sorry, President, I haven't been keeping track of questions for that. But I mean, yeah, I think what's interesting is, you know, as I was sitting here typing in the chat, I mean, Lynn is spot on with all of these things. We, you know, Presley, you and I, we were at a sex trafficking dinner last night with some people out of Atlanta. These are real things that occurred. I personally went to a training for the Center for Self-Governance on Saturday, and that's what all of this stuff, these things they were talking about was, you know, sheriff's associations, all these national associations. It's all about becoming more of a one world order, and that's actually something that's promoted here in Greenville by Stacey Shea and Jennifer Black. So they're actually promoting a lot of the stuff that we think and believe that are out there and that Lynn is pointing out to us. So it gets a little confusing why they're enabling and helping the establishment. But you know, we're dealing with it. It's amazing, the cheating and the outright. I mean, you know, if I had somebody send me a text message today about, you know, South Carolina House rep making statements about, or liking posts about just lying about what Lin Wood stands for. The comments were, oh, peg him as somebody who is a Democrat that came here and he's with Stacey Abrams and they're trying to destroy South Carolina. Well, my personal experience is that's the same thing they did with us with school choice. When we moved here from the state, from Georgia, or moved back home from Georgia, they said, they told people I destroyed school choice in the state of South Carolina. Oh, I'm sorry, in the state of Georgia. It's a $100 million program. It works great. It's one of the top programs in the nation. But they told people all kinds of amazing things. So, it is, we have obviously, struck a chord, but what I would tell Mr. Wood is people are not quitting. People are more enabled, and win, lose, or steal, we have already won this election because so many people's eyes have been woken up to what is going on in the state of South Carolina, in the GOP.
Well, let me say something as a matter of my faith. We're dealing with the real world and we're dealing with flesh. But the battle is between powers and principalities. The devil is a student of humanity. The devil knows your past. That's why they attack us based on our past. The devil doesn't know your future unless you tell the devil your plans, and then you don't want to tell him until you need to, because the devil will have a heads up start to try to mess things up for you. If they're attacking me, saying that I'm here under some guise of Stacey Abrams, that's a lie. If they tell you I'm trying to destroy South Carolina, the opposite is true. I'm trying to help save South Carolina. When I address the issue of being an alleged Democrat, which is a lie, I have never been affiliated with any political party until I actually went all in 2020 for President Trump and the Republicans. If you look at my spending record, I was never a big donor, although I did donate to a former law partner who was running against Stacey Abrams, against my advice, because I didn't think she had a chance to win statewide against the Abrams machine. But I gave her $10,000 to a PAC, and then I gave her $2,500. I didn't really want to do it, but I did it out of loyalty. I also thought she was a person of integrity. People of integrity need to be in government. She lost to Abrams. I held my nose and I voted for Brian Kemp because Stacey Abrams is corrupt. She is a crook. So anybody that tells you that I'm part of anything to do with Stacey Abrams is a unmitigated liar. I also I've fallen on my sword about Barack Obama in 2008. He fooled me. I did not like John McCain. I was right about McCain, wrong about Obama, but I realized it. And I represented in 2012 a great man, Herman Cain, until he was forced out of the campaign for false allegations about womanizing. I voted for Nixon, got fooled by Bush 41 and 43, loved Ronald Reagan, supported Gerald Ford. I think I did vote one time for Clinton. He fooled me too, but he was a middle of the road, blue collar Democrat. I thought he was a good guy. I was wrong. I didn't do my research on people in the past. I did do my research on Trump in 2016. I was a Trump supporter. And then I watched what he did, delivering on the promises that he made. He was doing God's will for the country. I went all in. They don't tell you about the $700,000 that I spent for Trump and for candidates for the Republican Party all over the nation in 2020. Now, I can't be a Democrat and a Republican. The truth is, I've always been conservative. My views on social matters have become more conservative with age. And now, thanks to my faith, I'm the first person who will stand up and tell you that the Constitution is based on God's law and Roe versus Wade is unconstitutional. Life begins at conception. Or as we'd say in a matter of faith, it begins at creation. So I've got a lot of views that have evolved over time, but I've never been a Democrat. I've never been a registered Republican, but all of my life as an adult, I have probably been 80+% on the conservative side with the Republicans. I have never made the mistake of supporting a liberal socialist candidate until I got fooled by Barack Obama. Fooled me once, he didn't fool me again. I now know that he was not here to help America. He was here to destroy America. Trump knew it. I think other people in the government knew it, in the military. And I believe they've taken things into their own hands to make sure that we get rid of this corrupt cabal of people that are running our banking system, killing our children, and all for what I believe ultimately is to do the devil's work. So I'm still a believer strongly that Donald Trump is president. I think we're walking by faith, not by sight, spiritually. I think we have to walk by faith and not by sight right now in the real world. I think there are things that are going on. I think I have an understanding of why, in all probability, President Trump endorsed, if he did, McKissick, McMaster, plays golf with Lindsey Graham. I think he endorsed Tim Scott, who turned on him. None of those people supported an investigation of the 2020 election. Donald Trump is a master in terms of the art of war. Keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer. Right now, the last thing I'd want would be an endorsement from Donald Trump if I was someone that did not support an investigation and reversal of the 2020 election. But that's all Drew McKissick can talk about besides demeaning the bikers. All the great successes he claims in 2020 in South Carolina. Were there successes? Yes. Was there an improvement? Yes. What McKissick will not admit is the truth. That was not the result of McKissick. That was the result of Donald J. Trump. He got more people involved. He helped the South Carolina Republican Party, and the leadership of the South Carolina Republican Party wants to take credit for it. They want to embrace him when he helped them, and they turned their back on him when he needed their help to contest the 2020 election. The fact that South Carolina went for him for 7 points instead of 17, which I believe is more accurate, didn't do America any good. South Carolina officials should have been doing what I was doing, fighting 20 plus hours a day to call the fraud out to the American public, expose it, and put the right person in office. But I think that it's all going to go well eventually. I think when South Carolina, if you take this Republican Party with the people, South Carolina will lead the way. People will see the example, they'll feel emboldened, and it'll be like dominoes. South Carolina will give its party back to the people, and then other Republican state parties will do the same thing. Just like when they get a solid finding of fraud in Arizona, because that went overwhelmingly for Trump, then you're going to have a state-by-state audit, and all of that is going to go down like dominoes. Does Trump need for that to happen? I don't think so. Is it good that it's happening? Yes, because people are waking up and people are getting involved again. Probably more so than any time since 1776. People are realizing they can't sit around and leave the future of our country in the hands of people that will lie, cheat, and steal. We got to take our country back from the ground up. We're doing it in South Carolina. I believe we're going to be successful. I think all the lying and cheating is going to be exposed. And I don't think Drew McKissick and his cronies are going to get away with it. I know they're not, as long as everybody stays on board, takes the position that I believe that I take and tell you I take. I never quit. God did not inspire me to be a quitter. I'm a fighter. He didn't inspire me to be afraid. I'm fearless. If the members of our party continue to fight for what's right, and they're not afraid or intimidated by this cabal of people who are themselves cowards, you're going to win. When I confronted Drew McKissick last night, I could see the fear in his eyes. He's scared to death of me. He's scared to death of the people. You've got him on the run. Stay on him and watch him run further and further until you run him out of the Republican Party in South Carolina. And then you can clean it up and you can make this party better.
Well, Lin, I obviously agree completely with you, but one of the things that I think has been very helpful for folks in identifying this rhino establishment is the simple question, the simple point. We see a lot of these folks sit there and say, Trump lost, so we need to move on. I'm like, how can we ever trust an election again if we're just move on?
You got two things that will identify your rhinos. One, are they moving on from the 2020 election without contesting? And secondly, are they fine to continue to embrace computer voting machines? If the answer is yes to either one of those or both, and usually it's both, you got to get those people out of your state government. They're not your friend. They're using their positions for their own financial power, cover up their crimes, and spread the money like money changers among all their business cronies. There's a network. I know the people in Georgia. I know who's running that network. They've got connections into South Carolina, just like that Ramparts had connections into Indiana. This is a national problem. South Carolina led the way, I believe, in the Revolutionary War from what I've studied. I know it led the way in the Civil War. It started off to be the first one to create the division. But what did South Carolina end up doing? By starting with division, they ended up bringing the country back together again. South Carolina's a leader. I think it's going to be a leader in trying to clean up the mess we've got in the Republican Party. I also think you need to push your legislatures to have closed primaries. If you don't have a closed primary, you don't have a party. Just like you had to build a wall to have a country. If you've got Democrats voting in your Republican, in effect, your primaries, then you're manipulated by the other side. And they're all manipulating for their own benefit. They're in bed together, the Democrats and the Republicans in elite leadership positions. I know that I've read, and I think it's been documented, as red and conservative as South Carolina is, you may have the most liberal, progressive state legislature. Why? Because they're in bed together. I bet you they picked the person to run against Lindsey Graham because he was a weak opponent and cut a deal with Lindsey, said, we're going to run somebody weak against you. Now you owe us for the next 6 years. But I bet you if Lindsey Graham, if they check to get a real vote, he may not have even won against a weak opponent. I haven't heard anybody in my time in South Carolina, except the people in the elite, the old guard, the Chamber of Commerce, businessmen and ladies. I don't hear anybody at the grassroots level that gives two hoots for Lindsey Graham. Yet he stays in power with $102 million in his deadgum pack.
Well, we definitely are on the same thought pattern there about what's going on with the money and following the money trail. One of the things that has come up in regards to Drew McKissick is the fact that he, and through the SCGOP, ran competitive or more establishment candidates against some of our most conservative Republicans here in the state. What do you think the role of the ought to be in primaries, Republican primaries? A fair playing field, or should they be picking and choosing? Sadly, they're picking and choosing more establishment candidates.
The Republican Party should be 100% behind the Republican candidates that support the conservative views of the party. You can't mix. Y'all have to excuse my dog barking in the background. And so I've heard, without knowing names and dates, I've heard about McKissick basically not supporting solid conservatives and actually ended up supporting more liberal opponents. That doesn't make any sense to me. It defies common sense. Deals are being made. Because if you're a conservative Republican, while you might make a mistake, I admit mine, remember, 2008, you're not going to repeat that mistake, and you're not going to have it occur on a widespread basis. There's a reason why you've got to look hard at the people in power. You got to look at your Senate Majority Leader, maybe the most powerful person in the state. You got to look at your governor and lieutenant governor, but where's the real power? I think you ought to look into why Governor McMaster a few years ago fired Drew McKissick. Later, McKissick got back in. McKissick's never met a payroll. I met a payroll for 30 plus years of my 44-year practice of law. I was always proud that I never missed a payroll. Even on some occasions when I couldn't pay myself, I always paid my employees. Drew McKissick's been in politics for 30 years. He couldn't go out and run a business if his life depended on it. He's a political junkie. He's come up in an era where the politics maybe have always been about money, greed, power. Scratch one guy's or one lady's back and you do favors. It's a system that has failed us. It led us to a defrauded election in November of 2020. The last thing South Carolina can do is to put all of these good people to work, believing that they can change the system because the power's in the people, and then have Drew McKissick pull off a Joe Biden fake election at this convention. It's got to be stopped. It's only going to be stopped when you're vocal and not intimidated. Don't let them scare you off from what you're doing. Don't let them silence your voice, because eventually they are hearing it. And I think they're hearing it loud and clear right now. And I think from Rona McDaniel, who I think is a rhino, all the way down into South Carolina, they are scared, not by Lin Wood. They're scared by the power of the people. Keep them uncomfortable, keep them scared, keep them on the run. You'll win this thing.
Well, Lynn, Presley here, you have definitely energized all of us, and Jeff and Olga and Walt and Mike and several others. I don't want to start listing names. There's too many to list, and I'll forget somebody. But a lot of people have been working very hard for the cause, and not just for you, but we respect you, but for the cause that you stand for, that we stand for. And I know we're coming up on the 1 hour mark of this conference call here. I don't know what your time frame is, but I will make a quick announcement right now. For those of you, here's our push and our goal. We have got to get delegates in front of Lynn. We've got to get delegates talking to Lynn because we want to win their hearts and minds. I know Lynn can do that if we're allowed to get him in front of these delegates. I know he's going up to York County on Thursday night. There's some other things happening, but this Sunday, May the 2nd at 1 o'clock, Lynn, would you like to tell everybody what you're going to be doing with our good friend, Chris Cox?
I would like to tell everybody, and I'd like to make note that the Bikers for Trump, as a matter of policy, do not endorse anyone that Trump does not endorse. I know that Chris Cox, the founder of Bikers for Trump, was at Mar-a-Lago last week. I know he came in here Friday night at the rally that we put together in 36 hours, and it was spectacular, fun rally. And he endorsed me. And then he contacted me and said, I want to set up 2 or 3 more rallies for you. I want to dress up a Winnebago and start driving it around town, saying win with Lynn. I'm not suggesting that he got some marching orders at Mar-a-Lago, but I'm not going to dispel the idea that he may have. What I will say is that the Bikers for Trump are having they're going to do it at 1 o'clock on Sunday. They're going to do it right outside of Charleston. I've got it on my website, the address. And we got General Michael Flynn coming down. Mike is taken off of a busy schedule. I'm flying him down here from Providence, Rhode Island. He's going to be here for 3 hours or so. He's going to speak in my behalf, and then he's got to go back. The next weekend, we're going to do another one. We're doing them at the Honky Tonk, the thing that Drew McKissick demeaned us about. We'll do it at 1 o'clock. So he can't demean us because we're having it at 11. I believe we're going to have Mike Lindell. I might try to get Sidney Powell down. I still am talking with my friend and fellow director on Fight Back, Herschel Walker. Herschel, I think, is a real serious candidate for the Senate in Georgia. I'll be there to help him. I think he'll come here to help us and to help the people. So we've got 2 rallies, one planned for Sunday, and then we've got another one the following Sunday. We're going to try to work in another one over at Chris Cox's area where he lives. So we've got some great people trying to help us. If you get with Presley, he can give you the times and dates, or you can always go to Telegram until they shut me down to find out what I'm posting. And I'm trying to put as much information out there about what's going on in South Carolina. So if you go on Telegram at Lin Wood Speaks Truth, you'll be able to keep up with the what's beginning to become somewhat of a mini series to people that follow me on Telegram, because they're fascinated with what's going on in South Carolina. You are setting an example that people want to follow. When they see you fight, it makes them want to fight. When they see you taking on the establishment, it makes them want to take on the establishment. So we've got some rallies coming up. I like the Win with Lin rally because it was a mini Trump type rally. We had people lined up 2 or 3 blocks down the road trying to get in. The people are ready. It's not about Lin Wood. It's about their desire to have their country and their government be returned to them and to the basic fundamental principles this country was founded on. They're patriots. So is Trump. They love America. So does Trump. They believe that God needs to be back in government, in our schools, and in our politics. So does Trump. This is not about Lin Wood, the person. Even if they attack me, disregard it. If it's a problem to you, come ask me about it. I'll tell you the truth. The problem is they cannot attack the message, because the message of the party right now, the people at the grassroots level, the message is truth. It's about America first, and that's what's going to win. You got the winning message, and you got at least a messenger, flawed as we all are, that's willing to go out and advocate the message for you. So if you can attend these rallies, listen, the more people that show up, what's the message to Drew McKissick? Don't demean these people, because they will overwhelm you. You will not be able to cheat, because you're not going to be able to cheat if you've got 10,000 eyes watching every move you make. Monitor what's going on in the counties. Call them out if they're cheating. Don't let them get away with it. Demand fundamental fairness. I feel like Trump when he called me after the election, and he said, Lin, I won. If I had lost, I would have gracefully exited. He said, but I'll never concede because I won. I said, Mr. President, don't you ever concede. You won a landslide. He's never conceded. I'm the same type of person. We play by the rules. If I lost, I'd say, that's the way the game is played. At least we had a fair game. But if I win, I'm going to live up to my word in terms of what I'll do for you, as long as I'm the chairman. But it ought to be done in a fair, open, honest, transparent election process. Don't settle for anything less. You deserve that, and anything less it's undeserving of you. It takes away from your right to run your own country, to run your own political party. So I would just ask people to get involved as they are, stay involved, get others involved, spread the message. I can't meet with everybody. I've only got 24 hours in a day. But if you've met me and you've heard me talk, tell other people what I say. When they say Wood's a Democrat, give them the facts. I've given them to a lot of people. Spread the message of truth. That message will get through. And I believe that even people that have in the past kind of committed to McKissick, I believe you can talk to them and you can turn them. I don't think McKissick's going to be able to talk to the people that support me, the people. I don't think he's going to turn many votes away. I think the people know the truth. So we're not out of this thing. I'm going to treat it like I'm 20, if it was a percentage, I'm going to run like I'm 20 points down until the vote is in. All I want is a fair shake. I'm entitled to it. McKissick's entitled to it. He's trying to cheat. Don't let him get away with it.
Yes, Lin. A lot of people have been asking about this event. For those of you who are on your computers on Zoom, Olga has the rally up there. For those of you that are calling in by phone, it's going to be at 192 College Park Road in Ladson, South Carolina. This will be posted on myscgop.com. You can go there. If you haven't already, sign up on myscgop.com, because what we've started here in 2021, we're going to continue to 23, 25, 27, as far as the Republican Party goes. That will also translate, folks, into what we're going to be doing during the election season in the even number years, because there are a lot of politicians who just need to go, and we're going to need your help and support there. But Lin Wood has been leading the way. Excuse me, he's been leading the way for us, and he's been bold about it, and he's taken a lot of flack and you know you're over the target when you're taking the flack the way he and a number of others of us have been taking this flack. Lynn, there's a few, I don't know what your schedule is. I know we have some actual delegates on the line, Lynn, and some
Yeah.
of these delegates, I would like to afford them to ask a question of you because they haven't made up their minds yet. And I would like those of you, and I'm going to start with Tyler Jordan, if Tyler's still on the call, I believe he is. And then if you are a delegate, if you're not a delegate, please, we're really trying to communicate to the delegates. But if you're a delegate, would you raise your hand in the back office for the next few minutes? And then we want to respect Lynn's time. We want to respect everybody's time. But if you've got a specific question for Lynn as a delegate, if you're going to the state convention, you haven't made up your mind, here's your opportunity to ask Lynn a question. And Tyler, if you would go ahead and unmute yourself, and I'll let you ask the first question.
Thanks, Presley. Hey, Lynn, good to be here.
Tyler, nice to speak with you again.
Yes, sir. So I'm from Oconee County, and we sort of had a coup d'etat up there against the establishment. And so we steamrolled them. We're all brand new. So we're not exactly good old boys. We're the opposite of good old boys. We're not establishment either. And I really appreciate the message you've been saying this evening. I think the main concern, just speaking from talking to my delegates, is, and I'm sure you spoke to this ad nauseum, just how, some of the quote unquote off the wall comments. I think that's the main thing people disagree with or find leery. So how would you suggest, explaining that, I guess?
Well, I would say this, and before I answer that, Tyler, let me say it's at the Honky Tonk Saloon in Ladson,
Right.
on College Park Road at 1 o'clock. It's Back the Blue, and also featuring Mike Flynn and me. Now, off the wall. Now, what the people want to do is create a frenzy by telling you that Wood's making off the wall comments.
Right.
The first thing I would do is to tell people to look at the body of my life's work as a lawyer. I don't make off the wall comments. I am an expert focusing for 26 years on defamation. If I go out and say something, you can rest assured that while I may not know if it's true or false, I've got credible information to base it on. I've had credible information with respect to my comments about Vice President Pence. I'm very confident that I'm right, but I know that I have credible evidence to support what I've said. I know that I have credible evidence with what I've said with respect to Chief Justice Roberts. If you look at some of the things he's done of late in the last few years since Obamacare that raised the eyebrow, you hear some of the rumors about his children and things like that. I've got credible evidence to support what I said. In terms of other off-the-wall comments, I don't know what I've said, but I know this. Stay tuned. I believe that everything that I have said is likely going to prove true in time. But I feel like maybe that I've been kind of positioned as the person that goes out to prepare the battlefield. If all of a sudden you learn some bad things about Pence, it'd be like having somebody throw a bucket of ice water on your head. So in a way, I think one of my roles is to prepare the people for what's to come so that it doesn't hit them right out of the blue. But I'm willing to take any comment that someone says that I've made that's off the wall. I'll discuss it straight up and I'll tell them the truth. I had a lawsuit filed against me by 3 lawyers that used to share space with me. They put in a fraudulent claim accusing me of fraud. That claim is contested, but yet I can't get any courts to rule on the motion to dismiss it. These lawyers, and I'll give you an example, something that's off the wall. These lawyers put in there a lot of things that I said to them when I was mad as hell, excuse my language, Lord, because they were using my children to turn my children against me. That's a violation of one of God's commandments. And I looked over at them at one time and I said, you're messing with my children and the commandment to honor their father. You're not messing with Lin Wood. you're messing with Almighty God. Next thing I know, there's a lawsuit claiming that Lin Wood said he was Almighty God. That's how they operate. They take statements out of context to try to paint you to look like you're some sort of a nut, or that you're saying off the wall comments. If you put everything I've ever said in context, you'll understand exactly why I said it, and you won't think it's off the wall. In fact, you'll probably look over and say, I don't blame you. I would have said the same thing. So if there's anybody that's got a quote unquote off the wall comment made by me, I don't have a history of doing that. But I'm happy to talk about any specific comment that I've made. I believe when you talk to me about it, you're going to leave satisfied that there was a justifiable basis for the statement that I made.
Okay, fair enough. Maybe, you know, we
Lin?
were also miffed by that McKissick comment about the bikers for Trump. No, that was not received well in our crowd. We have a honky tonk bar of our own called Last Chance up here, and we tried to invite Drew, but he said he didn't have time. So maybe we can get you up here. I don't know.
Drew is not a man of the people. Drew is a man of the elite.
Right.
He wants to run with the elite. If you put him out in the real world, he wouldn't make it a day. He just doesn't communicate with the people. The people have the power and should run this party. You need somebody in there that understands. Now with me, God is good to me. I've had enough financial success from my hard work that, you know, I've been able to survive the last 6 or 7 months without making a dime. I basically have given up my law practice to fight for the reversal of the election. And then old Presley and the rest of y'all drugged me into this fight when I was ready to go. I'm a fighter, especially when I'm fighting for something that's just. Justice for me is for people to be treated fairly and with respect. The members of the party are not being treated fairly, and they're not being treated with respect by Drew McKissick and the cabal of people that run this party along his side. So I hear you, Tyler. I want people to know that I may have a lot of property over here in Yemassee. I believe that's just a blessing from God. And I try to use it for the good of the community and for the good of other people, because I can't take it with me. But I do know this. I've worked with people that are billionaires, represented 5. I've worked with people that didn't have hardly more than a shirt on their back, and I know how they feel, because that was me at age 16. So I came from a I'll say modest means family, probably lower than modest. But I understand people. I understand the people that feel like they're on the bottom of the rung, and I understand people that think they're at the top of the rung. I understand all the people in between. I've had a lot of experiences in my life before I became a lawyer in terms of where I worked and people I worked with. I love the people. I understand the people. I think people are all equal. I told a man that used to shine shoes and run the locker room at the Country Club of the South, where I was a member for a few years. And I told him one day, I said, if I ever get to the White House and they recognize Richard Jewell, I'm going to make sure that you're invited, Don. And he said, I can't believe that, Mr. Wood. He said, you know, I'm just honored to work around all these wealthy and powerful people. I said, what do you mean? Do you think you're less than them? Do you think the king can function without the benefit of the help from the servant? If you look at it realistically, the servant may be more important than the king, because the king can't do his job without the ability of the servant, the people that he needs to help him. We're all equal. We all ought to be treated fairly and with respect. And when I see all my life people that have not done that, whether they're rich or poor, I don't like it. And I've always been on the side of the person that fights for the little guy. I take on the Goliath. I told the story today. When I get to heaven and I find my house in the King David subdivision, King David's going to come up to me and say, I don't understand, Lin, your house is bigger than mine. And I'm going to first tell him that's because you had 8 divorces and I only had 4. And then he's going to look at me and he's going to say, well, heck, Lin, I slayed Goliath. And I'm going to look at him and say, now, King David, listen, I took down CNN 3 times. I took down Tom Brokaw and NBC, and I took down Jeff Bezos in the Washington Post. Do you understand why my house might be a little bit bigger? And old King David's going to say, I got you, Lin. Glad to have you as a neighbor.
That's good.
Oh,
That's good.
hey, Lynn, that was great. Lynn, you did refer to your life and your upbringing, and your testimony, Lynn, is so powerful. And do you have a few minutes to just share your testimony and how you found God again, what you went through as a young man? And I think the people need to hear that.
Well, I'm happy to give you. I'll give you a short version of it, but Cliff Notes version. But let me say this: just since I've been in South Carolina, just talking with some of the fine people that asked me to get involved, I've heard some testimonies that are more powerful than mine.
Yeah.
You see, we all need to remember that our past is our testimony.
Mm-hmm.
Our future is not our past. Our future is our hope. Our hope in the expectation that God keeps his promises. So your past, your testimony, is what prepares you for your future. It's where you learn. Sometimes you learn by doing good. Sometimes you learn by the things you did that were bad in the eyes of people. I think it's all planned myself. I believe God uses sin in your life to teach you and prepare you to be the person he created you to be when he taps you on the shoulder and says, time to go to work. I grew up in a household of domestic violence. My parents were alcoholics, and they would go hard on God, and then they would go hard into drinking, and my father and mother fought physically, brutally. Spent a lot of nights running to my neighbor's house to find the police to call them. Saw my dad pull down in front of the police station, saw him in confrontations with the police, saw him getting locked up and thrown in the car. And then I came home at 16, and my mother was beaten to death brutally. I found her. I knew what had happened. But I forgave my father, and I helped him get a lawyer so he didn't get murder when it should have been involuntary manslaughter, which eventually is what he pled guilty to 5 years later. It could have been my mother drunk, picking up a knife and killing my father. I understood. I found God as a teenager because I found my refuge in the church, and I found my refuge in school. But I knew what people were saying when I was at school. I knew I was the Wood kid that was always running around, whose parents were beating each other up and the police were coming. I moved on from it. I knew people looked down on me for it. I did not let it deter me. I understood. So I turned my back on God when I was 16, and I became an independent guy saying, I got to make this work, and I'll make it work because I got the free will of a thundering herd of buffaloes. I did it. I found success. I also made mistakes along the way. And then I realized when God tapped me on the shoulder at age 66 that I didn't do it. It wasn't Lin Wood. It was God. He was always with me. He never forsaken me. So my life is one that people say, well, that's a great testimony. But there are testimonies of people on this phone call, and there are other testimonies of people that we don't know that had a lot tougher life than I did. Everybody's got their own bag of rocks. Everybody's made their own mistakes, committed their own sins. We're all imperfect. We're all sinners. In a perfect world, nobody would throw a stone at someone else. But yet we spend most of our time, particularly in politics, throwing stones when they shouldn't be thrown. Now, when somebody's lying, that's a different story. I've never lied. Well, I've lied to my ex-wives, so I sin there too. But in my business, in my profession, since I was a first-year law student, I've never knowingly told a lie that I thought would hurt someone else that would get me off the hook. I've tried to lead an honest life. I never cheated anybody out of a dime. I cheated, but it was usually with women. And I drank more than I should have, but I was never a drunkard. I just liked to drink. I gave that up 8 years ago. I thought, well, man, I'm tough. I can quit drinking without going to any type of counseling or anything. I just make up my mind to do it, and I did it. I realized that God took the taste and desire out of my life. That's why it was so easy. That doesn't make me a saint. It doesn't make me someone that judges anybody else. People come around and say, do you mind if I drink around? I said, fine. It doesn't bother me. Jesus turned water into wine. He just doesn't like a drunkard. So I make sure if I'm around somebody who's drinking too much, that I make sure they get home safely, or make them stay where I am. So I feel like that my life's experience is not so much the great things that people think I've done or the bad things that people think I've gone through. I think what makes my story unique in its own way is that I've seen a variety of life's experiences. That gives me wisdom. Wisdom comes from longevity of life and a variety of life's experiences. I feel like I've got a lot of wisdom. What people thought was bad, it's turned out for me to be a blessing in disguise. God takes evil, shows you how he can make it good, shows you how he will defeat it, so you'll give him all the praise. He's Almighty God. He's the perfect Father. He only acts for good, and he deserves the praise. And that's what he wants from his children. So I praise him. I ask him to give me the needs that I need met. He answers every prayer. God is real in my mind. There's no doubt about it. He's a living God. Jesus is my best friend. He paid the sacrifice for me. I thank him every night. I praise him every day. I pray as often as I can. I pray in the shower. I got calluses on my knees where I get on my knees and pray. That doesn't make me better than anybody else. That's just the way I live my faith, which is strong. I trust God. I don't worry about death. I have eternal life. That because I know that, I don't fear any man. I don't fear any event. If you don't fear death, you're fearless. God created us with a spirit of fearlessness, not a spirit of fear. So my testimony, while you might view it as unique, I view it as one among many. And I know some people, without calling names, that have had some tough times, have done some heavy drugs. I did my share lightly. I say lightly, I inhaled, but I didn't end up in jail for it. I know people that did. But I've seen those people rise up, and when they tapped on the shoulder by God, they used the difficulties of their past to do good for other people because they understand people.
Wow, Lynn, amen. Thank you for that. Lynn, we've had 3 people who had their hands up. We're going to take the last 3 questions only. If you would make them short. Lana, you're up with a question for Lynn, then Yvonne, then Star, and then we'll call it a night, Lynn. So thank you for your time. But Lana, if you would, unmute yourself and ask Lynn the question.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go
Hello,
ahead.
Lana. Lana, I can hear you. Hello.
Hi, I've seen you at a couple events now. I'm the woman with the purple hair, half purple hair, Lynn, if you remember.
I know exactly who you are. Good to talk to you.
It's good to talk to you as well. I just wanted to know, what are we going to do to try to prevent this convention from being virtual?
Get out and show Mr. Kissick that there's a venue available that doesn't require that it be virtual. And it doesn't have to be done in Columbia. But I bet you there's a place. I bet you there's a lot of places. You throw those alternatives to him in writing, how's he going to say that he's got to have a virtual when you put options in front of him that say, no, you don't, you're lying? Call him out.
Okay. Yeah, I think some of my friends have already done some of that work and found venues, so I'm not understanding this excuse.
It's just an excuse. He's not telling you the truth. He wants a virtual convention to cheat. Call him out. Say, we've got 5 places that'll take this crowd. Then he doesn't have an excuse, does he?
Nope.
Except for people to know exactly what he's up to, and it won't be tolerated.
And Lana Presley here, all of you on this call, every one of you in whatever county you live in, you have an EC. Call your EC tomorrow morning. They are meeting on a virtual phone call tomorrow to discuss the very issue of a virtual versus an in-person convention. Let them know. Call them, text them, email them, put the pressure on them, telling them that you do not want a virtual convention, that you want an in-person convention. We have the power of the people behind us. And so we need everybody to do that tomorrow, please.
What time is their meeting? Do you know?
I think it's going to be in the evening, Presley, and I also think people that will be on the call will be ECs and the chairman. The ECs are the only ones that have a vote. But call your chairman, call your EC in your county, the current one, and then just push them. Ask them. Push to have an in-person convention.
Okay, good. So we have some part of tomorrow to kind of do a little research and then call. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
But call them.
Yeah.
Let me add one other thing in there too, because this is a spiritual issue. Confront them with the truth. The way you deal with a satanic attack, or the way you deal with somebody trying to pull one over on you, confront them with the truth. Truth will always prevail. There are places where this convention can be held. It does not be required to be virtual.
I agree.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Okay, Yvonne, you're next.
Okay,
And then
thank you very
Charles-
much. Can
Yes,
you
go ahead,
hear
Yvonne.
me? Okay, thank you so
can.
much, Presley. Yeah, Mr. Wood. Yeah, Mr. Wood, just do you have a gut sense about the real level of corruption within the judiciary in our country? Because that's the thing that really concerns me. That's the just an issue that would make, I think, discourage people very much. So is there really less of it than we think, or should we? Is that really a big battle that we are also facing, just having corrupt judges? Because that really is like the Supreme Court. That's the last place for us to turn. So what did your gut feel about that?
My gut feeling is that I got punched in the gut several times over this election. The judiciary in this country is corrupt, all the way up to the Supreme Court of the United States. I actually predicted the 6-3 split before they ruled against reviewing the election cases, including one of mine that Justice Thomas's dissent in the Pennsylvania case said was absolutely black letter law and needed to be heard. They didn't hear it. I know a little bit about why it's corrupt, and I know it deals with a CIA program called Sunset, where they did illegal monitoring of electronic communications of all Title III judges. That means your federal court judges and your Court of Appeal judges. I know there's a level of corruption that is by money. I know there's a level of corruption much more than you'll want to realize based on blackmail. Our judiciary is as corrupt as our legislatures, both federal and state. You can look at it and realize that we got taken over by the communists, the globalists, the people that want an elite group and a servant group, without firing a shot. The question is, are they going to take physical control of our country? I believe the answer to that is no, because I believe there are people in the military and in government, like Donald Trump, that knows what's going on. And I think they've known it. I think our president has known it since the day he took office. I would tell people to go back and listen to Donald Trump's January 2017 inaugural address. He knew everything then that we're learning now. When he made the statement that for too long, too few people have controlled the world and the country, the military, a member of each branch, came down in the stairway and stood behind him. When he finished that line of thought, they turned and marched off. I think what we didn't realize then was the symbolism that President Trump was telling us, that the military is behind him. So you got to clean out the state legislatures, your local school boards. You got to clean out your governors. You got to clean out the congressmen and the senators. You got to clean out your judiciary. It's going to be done. It's going to take time. But I know people come to me now and say, well, we need to sue. I said, you're not going to get anywhere until you clean up your judiciary. I'm going to be on a call tomorrow at 10 o'clock with some folks up in North Carolina, my home state where I was born. I was born in North Carolina, grew up in Georgia, now I live in South Carolina. Don't call me a carpetbagger. I got Southerner in my blood from birth to this present day. They're enacting a law there that's going to make Twitter and Facebook liable when they throw somebody off and the government doesn't do anything about it in 30 to 60 days under the Communications Act. I think there are other alternatives that would allow states to actually penalize these groups if they violate your right of free speech. So the long story is we got to fix our country from bottom to the top. Every branch. Well, poor President Trump, his executive branch was full of traitors all the way up to his chief of staff. He was a lot like Lincoln, except Lincoln couldn't trust his own wife. Donald Trump can trust Melania. She's a genius. I think she's his closest advisor. So the answer to your question is yes, the judiciary is corrupt. State, I actually think that we ought to be talking about term limits, including term limits for judges. And I think we ought to elect judges. We should not have them appointed. And then if they do a good job, elect them for one more term. Then send the judges back to being lawyers. You don't go to judge school, you go to law school. So you need to have people that are citizen statesmen. They go in, they serve their community, and then they return to that community. Same thing's true with judges. We got to stop letting them be appointed. We got to stop lifetime appointments. We've got to have them elected by the people. And then we got to let them serve and get out and get fresh blood, new eyes in to run our country, both from the judiciary to the legislatures.
Well, thank you, Lynn, for that answer. And our very last question for the night, Star Sade, you're on. And if you'd unmute yourself and ask Lynn your question, please. Star, just unmute yourself. Yeah, maybe she can't. Well, since she's not doing that, Lynn, we'll just stop right here. I'll let you take the last word with any final comments you have to us. And then we're going to be on 2 more Tuesdays, folks. Tuesdays at 8 p.m. And this is what we really need you to do. Find the delegates to the state convention in your county. Encourage them to get on these calls. I think if these people, they're reacting off based on what other people tell them. Tyler Jordan, he and I have had a number of conversations. Tyler, as of yesterday, had not made up his mind. He said, but I am willing to have an open mind to listen to Mr. Wood, to hear what he has to say. And I would dare to say that I think Tyler has been very impressed by what he's heard from Lin Wood. And we think if we are given a fair shake, and you people on the ground, all of us on the ground, we have to get our fellow delegates going to the state convention to dial in, to listen to Lin, to listen to what he has to say. If they don't like him after that and they want to stay with the same insanity we've been having with Mr. McKissick, well, that's their prerogative. But we think that we know that we can win the hearts and minds of people if we're allowed to get to them. And that's what we are all working. And I want to give a shout out to Mike Voden and Walt Horan. They've been working tirelessly with their team to get all these delegates put together for Lynn where we can get to them. But so Lynn, I'm going to stop with that. I'll let you have the last words, and then we'll close out the call.
Well, thank you, Presley. I know Chad Caden and I know Tracy Beans these people have worked a long time. They're not up here. Tracy's the executive director now, I think, for Horry County. I don't think Chad's running for office right now, but he should. He's worked really hard. I know a lot of people have worked hard. I love history. And I've said many times it's 1776 again. That didn't mean go to war, unless it became the last alternative. We had a King George, we had to take him out. We're not going to get there, I don't believe. I believe we're going to get our freedoms restored before we have to go out and actually fight in the streets. But if you look at what our history teaches us, look at the people that founded our country and fought for our freedom. They were reluctant. The ones that survived, go read their stories. They were reluctant, but they did their duty. Be a little bit discerning when somebody wants something too badly. Look for people that are reluctant, but are willing to serve. Those are the people that really want to serve, do good, and then move out of the way for others to step in and to also serve. We're all in this together. We're all Americans. We all love freedom. We all love to breathe the fresh air of liberty. Remember, this is not in the long term about us. It's about our children. It's about our grandchildren. It's about the generations to come, for ourselves and our family and for the families of others. Remember that it's not just one political party in one state. This is about something much, much bigger. Take pride in the fact that you're fighting for a cause bigger than yourself. You're fighting for the generations to come to enjoy the opportunities of America. We'll never let it be taken away from ourselves, and we'll never let them take it away from the generations to come, because we are Americans. That's what God gave us inside of our DNA, fighting for liberty and showing the world how we can live better because we live free.
Well, Lin, I don't think any better words we leave on than that. So thank you, sir, for your time. Thank you for encouraging us all. Thank you for enlightening us, educating us. And we just appreciate the sacrifice that you're making out there as we run you ragged all over the state here. And
well, let me just quickly say that I appreciate what everybody on this call and many others are doing. We're all in it together, and what I see in the efforts and the dedication from all of you, that inspires me to get out there and run around a little bit ragged, because I don't want to let you down, because I know you're not going to let me down. You're going to stay on Drew McKissick and the cabal, and you're going to defeat them. It's not going to be my victory. It's going to be yours.
Exactly. Well, Lin, thank you. Everybody come join us this Sunday down at the Honky Tonk Bar in Ladson, South Carolina. The address is going to be on myscgop.com. Come by and say hello to Lin, shake his hand. I promise you, he'll be out there in his hat in the hot sun all day long until the last person he's had a chance to shake their hand. I've watched him do this dozens of times, and it's what I really appreciate about you, Lin. You love the people. You don't give a speech and then scamper out the back door like Mr. McKissick does. You stay there and you talk to the people, and we really appreciate that. So hopefully you can come join us. Yes, go ahead.
You'll also have a chance to shake the hand of a true American hero, General Michael Flynn. When people find out what Michael Flynn has done for this country, it's much more than you realize right now.
Yes,
Michael
sir.
Flynn is a hero, and he's come here to help South Carolina in the midst of a very busy schedule. He's not coming to be praised, but I sure hope you'll have a chance to go up to him and shake his hand, shake the hand of a real American hero, and tell him how much you appreciate what he's doing for this country. He's going to be a historical figure in America.
Yes, sir. And Lin, if I'm not mistaken, I believe he was the first individual that came out to endorse you. I know Sidney Powell also endorsed you. We've got Chris Cox. You've got thousands of South Carolinians that are endorsing you. But we really do appreciate General Flynn. And by the way, if I may make a little plug here, on June 4th and 5th, Lin and General Flynn will be with us in Greenville, South Carolina for an event called Rock the Red. Go to rocktheredusa.com. You can get tickets. It's a weekend event, a Friday and a Saturday. We're doing a private dinner with Lin on Thursday night as a fundraiser. But Lin is graciously given his time. General Flynn, Tracy Beans, Tom Holman, former director of ICE, and a number of other guest speakers, subject matter experts from all over the country are coming in. And it's going to be a great 2-day event. And Lin will be our keynote speaker on Friday night. General Flynn will be our keynote speaker on Saturday night. But you can get your tickets. You can get hotel reservations at rocktheredusa.com. So, Lin, we appreciate your time. We appreciate your sacrifice. You know, folks, a lot of guys would be out playing golf at this stage in their life, especially someone who has had the success that Lin Wood has. But he's got a servant's heart, and that's what I appreciate about him. And so, Lin, just from the bottom of my heart, and I know from the hearts of all of those on this call and the thousands of others here in South Carolina that love you, I just want to say we love you. We appreciate you. And we'll see you on Sunday, and we'll talk to you again next Tuesday night. Have a good night,
thank you very much.
everybody.
Good night, and God bless all of you. Keep praying for me. Keep praying for the country. Let's hope this is the best July the 4th we've ever had, okay?
Yes, sir.